So here now exclusively 2020 presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. Marianne, thank you. I know the weather is crazy out there, and you've been traveling a lot, so thank you so much. It's great to have you with us. You know, we started off the program tonight showing the president's visit to El Paso and to Dayton. Do you think that it was the right thing for him to go to those two places as president?
Well, of course, that's, I think, part of the job of the presidency, and I think it would have been wrong of him not to go. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of discussion that, you know, the protesters, there was Representative Escobar came out and said, you know, I spoke with people in the hospital. No one wants him here. The mayor of Dayton came out and said, you know, people don't want him here. You know, as president, it would be, if he didn't go, the criticism would be that he didn't go, right?
Well, I was not aware. I knew that there were voices that did not want him to go, but I didn't know that the mayors had actually asked him not to go, so that is relevant.
Well, just to clarify, the mayor said he could come. They had I guess, a good conversation on the phone when all of this happened, but she's been quite critical of him since then. When you look at some of the other candidates who are running for the Democratic nomination along with you, they were very outspoken today. Sort of one of the major themes was that they believe that the president is fanning the flames of white supremacy, and that there's a direct link between the act that we saw in El Paso, at least, because we know that in Dayton, that killer supported another candidate, Democratic candidate. They're drawing a direct link between the president and this white supremacy movement. Do you think that's fair?
I think they're two different things. Fanning the flames is different than direct link. Do I feel he's fanned the flames? Absolutely. Do I think there's a direct link?
How so?
No.
Tell me how.
He has from the beginning of his candidacy, from the day he walked down the elevator talking about Mexicans the way he did. He has talked very disparagingly of people. Now, let's be very clear here. To me, this should not be a right-left issue. It should not be a Democratic or Republican issue. He has spoken in a way George Bush would not have. Neither George Bush would have.
He's a totally different person.
He's a totally different person. But my point is that this criticism is not based on his politics. This criticism is based on the way he speaks about fellow Americans. So absolutely, I believe that he has fanned the flames of some of the worst aspects of the American character. That is not, however, to say there's a direct link. That would be unfair.
Okay. This is, you know, I think that the supporters of the president would say that he is blunt, that he is not as, you know, sort of not as elegant in his speech as some of the people that you mentioned at prior presidents, but that his motivation has been pretty clear in terms of wanting to make the border a place where you can come through legally, but not illegally. Here's what he said when he was asked about that this morning. Let's play that.
I think illegal immigration is a terrible thing for this country. I think you have to come in legally. Ideally, you have to come in through merit. We need people coming in because we have many companies coming into our country. They're pouring in.
What do you disagree with in that statement?
I don't disagree with anything that he made in that statement, and I don't disagree with anything that he said in his speech, which was quite beautiful. The problem is how often his words and his actions have not been the same as statements that he just made. Legal immigration. You know, I heard your former guest talk about how lefties want open borders. No, we don't. I think that a place where there is a reasonable consensus on both left and right is that we want legal immigration. So
that's what the president wants.
That's what he just said. But when you look at some of his actual policies, there are many of us who have found them extraordinarily bigoted, such as separation at the border of parents from children.
We saw that under the Obama administration as well.
No, we didn't see anything like what he has done as stated policy.
We did. I mean, you know, even some of the pictures that were used by the media were pictures that dated back to the Obama administration. I think that it's correct that there are more of them now, because what's happened is we've seen a flood of people coming across the border with children. In some cases, they're not even their own. In some cases, they've grabbed the wrist of a child and brought that child in.
That's all the more reason why you don't just separate the child from the adult, because we have agents.
In some cases, you're helping the child by separating them because that child has no connection to that family.
But
in some cases,
we have trained agents within our police agencies at the border who know how to vet that, who know how to ask the questions of the child and the adult. So you need that agent there with the child and the adult to ask the kind of questions that would actually let them know for sure. Also, the president closing so many of the ports of entry. So actually, yes, there are those of us who feel that we have very legitimate
people are pouring through the ports of entry.
They're pouring through.
Housed. They're not closed. The ports of entry are not closed.
He has closed some of them. He absolutely has. And this flooding, the pouring through, is because of a humanitarian crisis in Guatemala, in Honduras, in El Salvador, and traditionally Americans cared. Traditionally, when there's a huge humanitarian crisis somewhere and people are coming because they're in such desperate circumstances, traditionally American policy, immigration policy, has been, you know, give me your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. That's kind of where we've been in our past.
Legally.
Of course, legally. But there are
But
ways.
you say, of course, legally, but people are coming through illegally.
And yet we are making
hundreds of thousands of them in months.
And that's all the more reason why we need more agents.
So you think you should just let them through?
No, I did not say that. Please don't put
Okay,
those
so
words
all
in
right,
my mouth.
I don't want you.
Okay,
What would
I'll
you
be
do?
glad
So
to tell you.
all those people come to the border.
We definitely need more agents. We definitely need more ports of entry that are open. We definitely need more technology. We definitely need more ways to handle
all those things that
legal.
you just mentioned are all in the president's in what he's wanted to do.
But the president, it's not about some of the things that he has said that he has wanted to do. The problem is with many of the things that the president has already done. I do not agree with you, and I don't think facts bear out that the kind of stated policy of separating children from their parents in such a cruel way, which
Nobody
to me
likes.
is
I don't think anybody. I agree with you. I mean that's not something
and
that
it has
anybody wants to see.
continued. Hundreds of these cases have been
But the
reported
reason that
since he said he was stopping that policy.
Right. So I want to move on to some other issues. But if you were president, how would you get both sides to come together? Because I think there's a lot of Americans in this country who are in the middle on this issue and think that there are reasonable solutions. And even the president has said, let's get Democrats and Republicans into the room. We can solve this in 45 minutes. But politically, it behooves both sides to stay dug in. How would you bring them together?
I think Americans need to be aware of what our history is. Ronald Reagan gave 8 million people amnesty. And until 1973, if people were undocumented, they simply went to a registry office. What I want as president is to end one chapter and begin a new one. I think the only answer is to say to every undocumented person who has not committed a crime, who has not committed some crime of transgression or felony against an American citizen, I think there should be a path to citizenship. There should be the kind of efforts that we need to make at the border from this point forward, and let us move on to a new chapter of American life.
All right. I want to speak to you about another topic that you brought up recently, which is reparations. You say that there should be a $200 to $500 billion fund that would be dispersed over 20 years, and you want to have a council that decides how the money is dispersed. How would that work?
Well, the stipulation on the part of the United States government should be very clear, and that is for purposes of economic and educational renewal. But I believe that within that, although that stipulation is extremely important and must be strictly adhered to, I think that there's a moral principle here. If I owe you money, I don't get to tell you how to spend it. So I believe that it's very important that this reparations council, 30 to 50 people is what I've recommended, which obviously should be very carefully chosen, people from academia, culture, politics, et cetera, who are known for their connection to this issue, for their research on this issue, et cetera, who make the kinds of decisions, whether it has to do with historical black colleges, whether it has to do with housing, whether it has to do with whatever it has to do with. But I believe part of the power here is that it would be the black community deciding how they wish to spend that money.
Before I let you go, you got a lot of attention in the debates. As you were speaking out, I think a lot of more people became familiar with you. What's your sort of, what's your cutoff point? At what point would you say, how do you grow your campaign? How do you get from 1 or 2% to,
well,
7 or 8 or 9 or 10%? Do you see that happening? And
well,
what's your vision for the future of your campaign,
listen,
real quick?
If you're in a debate, and the only state that doesn't put you as #1 Google search the next day is Montana, because the Montana governor was there, and you're the one that's talked about all over the place as the breakout, I think that's kind of a sign to continue. So as long as it gets signed,
are you going to get into the next debate? Will you make that cutoff?
Yeah. Anybody listening can go to Marianne2020.com, and I need about 16,000 more unique donors, even $1, by August 28th. And yeah, I need to get up in the polls, but this is democracy. I think it's healthy for our country. I think it's healthy for the Democratic Party. A lot of voices. You had it in the Republican Party last time. It was good for you. I think it's good. And let Americans hear. I think it involves more people in the process.
Yeah. Well, Republicans, exciting. You're right. They had a lot of candidates on the stage. Now you guys have beaten the other side with 20-something. Thank you for coming in and taking the questions. It's good to talk to you tonight. Marianne Williamson.